Today we're talking Instagram and how the drivers in F1 use Instagram and what you get out of it. 20 of the 21 drivers this year are active, some more active than others. More in just a moment, thanks to Canity.com. Instagram is the #1 social media platform used by all but one of the 2020 F1 drivers. So which driver doesn't have Instagram? Sebastian Vettel. In fact, Lewis Hamilton thought Seb was on Instagram. You might remember a press conference going back a little while ago where Lewis actually said, "No, I follow you on Instagram." And Seb said, "Can't do it, mate. I'm not on it." He is the only one that values his privacy and doesn't feel a need to tell the world what they're up to at every single stage of their life. So why is Instagram so powerful and how do the drivers use it? Well, let's have a look. For a start, it has huge reach. Everywhere in the world, well, not everywhere, almost everywhere in the world, you can access Instagram. But what it does for F1 fans is allows us to get close to the drivers. I asked Romain Grosjean how he used Instagram.
So Instagram is a really good way of communicating with people through mainly pictures that, when I see a picture of someone happy, it makes me smile, and obviously I like to like it. And I think for the fans, also sharing some of the moments from behind the scene and not only seeing racing cars is important. So, after the last German Grand Prix, I had a beer to celebrate 2 points, and I think people quite liked it. And also when I build Lego for my kids, people like it. So I think really it's a good way to share with people and to show the behind the scene and to have interaction.
And that's where this medium really comes into its own. Because when a driver posts an image of him in a driver's room, before a race, in an area that TV cameras and typically media don't get, that's something very personal. The other powerful thing about Instagram is it's almost instant, with people being able to take a photo on their phone, upload it within a couple of minutes with a quick caption. But what's in it for a driver? Well, let's have a look at the #1 followed F1 driver, Lewis Hamilton, with 20.2 million followers. By far and away, the leader when it comes to followers. When he puts a post like this up showing off a new Tommy Hilfiger outfit, that's worth a fortune to Tommy Hilfiger. But how do you get a following of 20.2 million people? That's done over a number of years with consistent posting of quality images, of content that obviously appeals to Lewis's fan base or whichever driver is posting that material. But Lewis is clever too. When he has someone like a Will Smith come in the garage, they'll both take selfies and they'll both put them up on their page and tag each other. So Will is promoting Lewis to Will's fan base and vice versa. When Lewis gets an opportunity to have a chat with Usain Bolt, same thing. They're both promoting each other to each other's audience. And that's how classic cross-promotion works. The other benefits for a driver in having that audience, yes, you get some sponsorship money. It also enhances your brand, and all of the young drivers are very conscious of that facet of the sport. And in order to keep those fans engaged, the content has to be constant, has to be interesting, and ideally it needs to be unique. We're lucky in this age that we can get this content so quickly. And I know with my Instagram page, when I put a picture up of Parc Fermé, say 4 minutes after those drivers have come in, that has huge response because you want to see something quickly. You don't want to wait a day or 2 days to see an image. That's old news. The Instagram is very much the now. So do all of the drivers post their own stuff? Most do. There are a couple who have outside people help out, but for the main part, it's their own content that they're providing to you and me as fans. So let's have a look at the drivers one by one. And bear in mind, all of the drivers are verified, and that's that little blue mark next to their name. That shows that they are genuine, that they've gone through a vetting process by Instagram, and that you're looking at the real Charles Leclerc, the real Lewis Hamilton. But obviously not the real Seb Vettel, because this page has no blue tick next to it. Let's start with the top 10 most followed F1 drivers. Starting off with Lewis Hamilton, 20.2 million. And yes, he tends to focus a lot on social change that he wants to bring about, and he uses his power with that audience to get that message across. Of course, he runs car pictures and pictures of him winning and other things as well, but it's a blend of social change, advertising content, and stuff that's important to him. Second, Charles Leclerc. Nothing too out there and zany. Unlike Daniel Ricciardo, who is third on the list here, he will regularly put up posts that are a bit of fun, and he features videos from time to time. Max Verstappen's not far behind Daniel, and if you flick through his page, there's a lot of headshots of him, lots of shots out of the car, a few shots of the car on the track, pretty standard sort of stuff. Lando Norris has put on a heck of a lot of followers in the last year and a half, and I think the real joy in looking at Lando's feed is the comical aspect of it. The hanging upside down photo here. This great shot of him at the end of his Eiffel GP, where he sat in that little marshal's hut there, and the comical caption. Now, I like the fact that he doesn't mind taking the mickey out of himself, having a bit of fun. And I think that's what people love seeing, the real person, not the corporate driver towing the company line. The sixth most popular driver is Kimi Räikkönen. He's only had 22 posts since the season started. And you look at that number, that 22, and you think, how does Kimi amass such a following with so few posts? But that's the power of Kimi Räikkönen. Spanish driver Carlos Sainz is active on Instagram. He's Carlos Sainz 55, not Carlos Sainz official, which is his dad. So if you have a look through his feed here, it's colourful. It's obviously full of the papaya colour for McLaren. A variety of images. Nothing from too much outside, or there's a shot there of him on a boat, but pretty much it's all track-based images. Valtteri sits in seventh. He's a prolific poster, and I'll go through the list of top posters in a moment and you'll see where he sits. It's admirable. And he's not frightened to show off his life away from the track with a couple of photos of him and his girlfriend Tiffany Cromwell, along with other things he gets up to when he's not racing. Pierre Gasly at number 9. He sits in the midfield when it comes to the number of followers and also the number of posts he makes per week. But in a minute I'm going to get to the engagement, and I think you'll find his stats are quite amazing. Nico Hülkenberg sneaks into the top 10 with just over 1 million followers. Now, of course, he's only raced 2 races this year, so most of his shots on his Instagram feed are candid looks into his life away from the track. Now we get to the second half of the field, and Sergio Perez is up next. And when you look through his Instagram feed, what do we see here? Lots of pink, obviously, a couple of shots away from the track, some harkbacks to previous memories for him. Are you a George Russell fan? He has some 907,000 followers on Instagram, and flicking through his feed here, a few pictures from behind the scenes, away from the track, and of course George does love those shots with his shirt off that he gets a bit of a ribbing for from the other drivers. Next up, Romain Grosjean. Now, I love Roman's page, and I'll tell you right now, and let's have a look at the table for the number 1 posts per week, and here he is on top. He posts 6.5 times a week. That's a tremendous figure and requires obviously a fair bit of effort. Somebody remarked on one of my posts that Roman's like a daggy dad, and he uses Instagram to show his human side, and people lap that up. Next on my list in terms of number of followers is Alex Albon. While he sits at number 14 on this list, he's at the very bottom in terms of the number of posts posted per week at just 0.5. So I'd suggest that Alex is interested, but he's not really committed, and he doesn't feel any real compulsion to be sharing every single thing he does with all those people on Instagram. Esteban Ocon's next, 690,000 odd followers, and a pretty standard sort of F1 page here. Pics of cars, pics of him, and I think people really don't want to see too many car pics. If it's spectacular, yes. More often, they want to see a little bit of personality. Daniil Kvyat with 464,000 followers is next. He's not really an avid poster. He sits just above Alex Albon in terms of the number of posts per week with just 0.6. Now, his partner Kelly Piquet was handling that last year. It's all come back to Danny now, and I would suggest he's not a real lover of the medium, has to do it, and occasionally he'll throw in a paid post because it's part of the deal. He has to promote his sponsors to his audience. And the final 4 are Antonio Giovinazzi, Kevin Magnussen, Lance Stroll, who has a surprisingly high engagement rate, which I'll run through in a minute. And tailing at the back of the field is Nicholas Latifi, who's only got about 30% more followers than I've got. But of course, he's only been in F1 less than a year, and in a very bizarre year. Now, while followers is an important number, it's not the be-all and end-all. Do you know what an engagement rate is? The engagement rate takes into account the number of followers, number of likes, number of comments. And the higher the number, the more engagement you have and the more powerful your Instagram page is. And it's normally measured over a specific period of time. Now, you can go to a site like flanks.com, which I did, going through and measuring the engagement rate of all of the 20 drivers. Have a look at who comes out on top. Pierre Gasly with a whopping 16+% engagement rate. Now bear in mind that's taken over a specific period of time and that will fluctuate. So when you look at it today, it will be different. But if you take a snapshot of all the drivers, this is what you get. 16.27% for Pierre Gasly. And if you go down to the bottom, we've got Lewis Hamilton at 2.06%. Now it's widely acknowledged that the more fans you have, the harder it is to keep your engagement rate up at a high level. So when you look at these figures, you see that Pierre has 5% of Lewis's audience, and yet he's got more than 8 times the engagement rate. Surprisingly, Alex Albon's second on that list, only doing some 15 posts since the start of this season. He's batting at 13.26%. Then you've got Hulk at 11-ish, Lando, Daniel and George in the 10s. And have I mentioned Canady.com, the world's best online staff training? Not today, I haven't, so let me quickly remind you, head there, Canady.com, for hundreds of short, sharp training videos covering everything involved in customer service. Thank you to Canady.com. Heading back now to comments, because they're important when you're on an Instagram feed. I imagine you probably do the same as I do, read through and see what's happening. And if you ever want a driver to return your comment or reply to it, make sure you get in very early on their post, because this is what I do too. When I put up a post, I'll sit there and see what the initial reactions like, make a few comments, and then at some point I'll turn that off and go off with something else. When it comes to the number of comments per post, Lewis Hamilton heads the field, 4,600 odd there. Daniel Ricciardo not far behind him, but Daniel only has a fifth of Lewis's audience. So Daniel gets more comments pro rata than Lewis. And then of course Pierre Gasly with 2,399. At the bottom, Nicholas Latifi only gets 77 comments per post. If we flip across to this chart, you can see that Lewis Hamilton is the number one like accumulator. Then you'll go down to Daniel, Charles, Lando, Max, Pierre, Kimi, the Hulk, Alex. And running through the second half of the field, as you can see, a variety there with Nicholas Latifi once again bringing up the rear. I also went through all of the drivers' number of posts from the start of the season in Melbourne to yesterday, the 14th of October. And here's the stats. The number one most prolific poster, Romain Grosjean, 201 posts at an average of 6.5 per week. As I mentioned earlier, it takes a lot of effort to keep doing that. And if you go down the very bottom, you've got Daniil Kvyat on 0.6 of a post and Alex Albon on 0.5. But of course, you've got to have the content and you've got to know what's important to your people and you've got to have the time to put this stuff up. And I know that from time to time when I've been working with drivers, I'll send them pics on a race day or quali day and I'll see them put it up and I'll think, they're obviously sitting in the back of the garage waiting to go out, not in the car obviously, and they've got time to post a picture in those few moments of dead time. I think we're lucky these days that we can get this insight into a driver's life, the behind-the-scenes stuff that we get, because going back 10 years ago, Bernie Ecclestone would never have allowed this sort of thing to happen. And I remember he used to write letters to Lewis Hamilton saying, stop putting that stuff up, because he wanted the exclusivity. He wanted that to be the domain of F1. Instagram is so very powerful. I love the thing. I'm addicted. I'm posting twice a day off race days, and when I get to a race day and a normal season, it might be anywhere from 7 to 15 posts. Instagram is the number one social media platform when it comes to Formula One drivers. If you've liked this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, I invite you to do that, and hit the bell button for notifications. And if you're a member, I've got new wallpapers just recently posted, and you can go and get them free of charge. Don't know what a member means? Well, click on the join button and find out. We'd love to have you as a member. If you're after a Christmas gift idea for an F1 fan, I recommend these. 21 different F1 driver books available at kimillman.com, and you'll see all of my best images on Instagram at kimillman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. These are great Christmas presents.